When KayCee's ViewSpot first had an interaction with Mrs. Rebecca Chandy on 11th March 2011, I had requested her to read out the very interesting piece she had written entitled My Story. I have told her that were she to write an autobiography, every page would be a page turner. Anyway, Mrs. Chandy has kindly agreed to read out her piece, and in this first part, it is of her childhood up to her marriage. Thank you, Mrs. Chandy, for agreeing to again appear on KayCee's ViewSpot. I'm sure the listener would like to hear both parts in their entirety. So without any further ado, here goes.
Thank you, Kalpana, for thinking my story interesting enough to be put on the YouTube.
Definitely.
One of my earliest memories of my father is of him dressed and ready, waiting for my mother to accompany him to the Dabar in honor of the birthday of the Maharaja of Travancore. In a long black coat and white trousers with a gold-bordered turban, he looked tall, lean and striking, with a prominent nose. Years later, I saw the same nose on a true-blooded Syrian Christian who facilitated our visit to the Nativity Church in Bethlehem during our trip to Israel. Was it just a coincidence? Or was it a sign of our Syrian descent? My mother, on the other hand, was short and plump, but fair and good-looking. She was the most loving of mothers, her passion in life being the pursuit of her children's welfare. I did not realize what a privileged childhood I had till I went to Nicholson's High School in Tiruvalla as a boarder. My younger sister Vilasini, my faithful follower, was also with me. Both of us were so turned off with the Spartan food, the unfamiliar discipline of rising early in the morning for exercise, set hours of study, and cold water baths, so that we cried our way out of the school, just as I had obstinately cried for the way into the school. I now realize what an obnoxious child I must have been. The happiest years of my childhood were in Kolkata, where my father was the Devon Peshkar, the equivalent of today's district collector. We lived in a big, sprawling house with many pews to serve us. My brother and two elder sisters were away in college, so we were only two girls at home. Happily, my elder sister Ella Kocha and husband and baby Raju lived near us. The most exciting part of our day was our daily trip in the evening to the beach, along with my sister and family, in our father's new acquisition, a maroon Plymouth sedan. On our way back, we used to step in at the movies. It didn't matter at what stage the story was, as my father had complimentary passes for any and every show. In our community, sons were coveted, but daughters were considered a misfortune. Fortunately for my parents, their eldest child was a son. 5 girls in succession, one after another. My father had a very wry sense of humor, and he used to tell us, even a king with 5 daughters will become a pauper. And we were 5 daughters. But my parents insisted, be it a son or a daughter, that we should perform well, mostly in academics. I worked hard to please my parents, and even though my father was proud of my standing first in the state for the SSLC examination and winning a gold medal and later many awards and scholarships, he was sad that I was not born a boy. My 3 daughters would always contrast this attitude with my husband's. He had no such specific longing for boys. He was equally happy with potas, as he used to say, which is a Tamil word for girls. Similarly, he never pressured the children to come first in class. On the contrary, after my exhortation to the children to top the class before every examination, he would call them and say, "Don't worry, I shall be very happy if you pass. But even if you fail, I will still love you." He was indeed a modern man.
Yes.
If I was fortunate in having such an eminent man as my father, I was even more fortunate in my mother. Educated and cultured, she taught us the value of hard work by word and deed. She worked hard at keeping a clean house, cooking wholesome food, stitching our clothes, and she had a hobby that was cultivating tapioca. Although she too was part of the syndrome of wanting sons, it is to her credit that she made us feel equally precious. Extremely sensitive to our needs, physical, mental, and psychological, she was a great comforter. My daughters still recall how she used to make balls of the remains of breakfast, puta and param, and put them in the unwilling mouths of her grandsons and granddaughters. And it was very gratifying for the granddaughters to see that she did not give more to the grandsons. When my second daughter, Rachel, was born, Appachan and Amachi were visiting my brother in Ernakulam. On that evening, they went as usual to the park. Finding him very quiet, my mother asked him why he was so quiet. He said, "Becky has got one more daughter." Amachi spoke up, "You will see that she will be better than a son for her." How prophetic were her words. She was not only a high achiever in studies, but a popular student leader in school and college. She passed the IAS examination and is now the chairperson of Andhra Pradesh Public Service Commission.
Which is a
While training in the National Academy of Administration in Missouri, she had met and married a fellow trainee, Tishya Rakshit Chatterjee, a most affable, suave, good-looking young Bengali, a Stephanian. He is now the principal secretary in the government at the center in charge of environment and forests.
Wow.
A very important position. They had 2 sons who insisted that I should write that they are hot and handsome. But I always told them, handsome is what handsome doth. One of their pranks was taking a photograph of me standing between them, both kneeling, and showing to all and sundry that photograph, where they looked much taller, even though they were kneeling and I was standing. The elder one, now having completed his MBA, is now working as the sales manager for Google. The second one, Palmer, the younger one, is a computer engineer, a tennis player, and a rock music star, all rolled into one. In my final year of the BA Honours course in Economics in Presidency College, I was proposed for marriage to John Chandy, son of the famous Mr. K. Chandy of Mysore. Johnny was then an ATS, Assistant Traffic Superintendent in the MSM Railway, one of the few Indian officers in railway service at the time. I was so much in love with the idea of getting married to a top railway officer that I agreed, even though I had never laid eyes on him. As I was led to the altar by my father, I saw a dark, portly gentleman sitting at the end of the front bench. My heart sank. But then someone said, not him, but the one next to him. Johnny looked fair and tall beside his brother-in-law, and I was much relieved. Our married life was a roller coaster affair. Born, brought up, and educated in Bangalore, Johnny was very westernized. His job in an exclusive service where he hobnobbed with British officers had fashioned his lifestyle. A peg or two of scotch in the evening, cricket or horse racing on weekends, English meals eaten with spoons and forks, and waited on by butlers and boys. But the Indian government salary could hardly support this lifestyle, and that did not bother him. He was a flamboyant personality, brilliant, witty, with never a care for the moral. Life with him was an eye-opener for me, who had come from the typical Syrian Christian culture of the landed gentry in Kottayam, Kerala. I, who had been taught to be careful with money, was amazed at his cavalier attitude towards it. He was generous to a fault, insisting that money was not a god. I, who had lived in a world of books and learned nothing about housekeeping, was suddenly the mistress of a large bungalow with many servants at my command. I, who had seen only the inside of a third-class railway compartment till then, was suddenly travelling by saloon. A whole bogie, like a little house on wheels. It took some adjusting, but I did it.
Thank you, Mrs. Chandy.
Hey,